Tim.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excited to be here. Had a 4
What you
o'clock.
got on your What you got on your shirt? Oh, the Panthers. Oh,
My wife makes me wear this. She bought this on sale. What? You know they're terrible. Oh, no, they were very, very good to me when I was high school principal. Very good to me back in the 90s. And
yeah.
I remember. I mean, I know they're terrible now. They got about a 7th grade boy trying to quarterback for them. So imagine that won't go well. I mean, he's playing with grown men that have malice in their heart.
I know. I bet you can find a lot of shirts on sale at
Oh
discounted
yeah,
price.
I'm sure she can. This is a Tommy Bahama. I couldn't afford Tommy Bahama if it didn't have a Panthers logo on it. These things are $200 a piece. The Panthers logo on it is $20.
There's something to the value.
Yeah, well.
Hey, Dr. Neal, Dr. Lamb.
And I got out. Hey, Ben.
Hey, sorry. Natalie might be a little late tonight. She got stabbed by a student with a pencil and went to urgent care, and they got all the pieces out, but she was waiting for stitches when she texted me last.
Oh no.
So if she's a little tardy, I mean, she's still trying to get here. She's just she's been stabbed by a student.
Well, that's her part. That's never good.
That is not good.
Kids have been, my understanding is schools have been very unsettled since the last shooting. A lot of other incidents and alarms, and I think there was something in Gaston and Cleveland today. But when things like this happen, folks who don't work in the business don't understand that. You know, it's not just we see it on the news, thoughts and prayers, and it goes away. It doesn't work that way.
No.
When I was high school principal, we had both Columbine and Jonesboro, Arkansas to happen. And if you'll remember, the Jonesboro deal was they were on lockdown, so they pulled the fire alarm, so everybody came running outside, then they shot them. But I was high school principal, and we had bomb threats. We had threats called in every day for 6 months. It was really, really, really bad. It was not a fun time. So it's not about me, but I'm just telling people don't understand.
My school had a threat.
How these things, it's like ripples in a pond, and they don't stop. They just don't stop. I don't know why people can't understand that it really makes schooling hard when we just thought and prayers and the behavior just continues right on, and we don't do anything to address it. But that's where we are. Well,
and the news tonight that says they've charged an 11 and a 12-year-old for the threats in Cleveland, Lincoln, Gaston counties, like 40 schools it affected. 11 and 12 years old did not want to go to school, so thought they put a picture of holding a gun and saying beware.
Yeah.
We had a threat at our school today too, that they've got our campus on high alert now too because of something like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, when we start 603 with the safety and crisis box, people are like, well, why you do that? That's just, I wish I didn't have to start 603 with safety in the crisis box, but that's the most important thing now, unfortunately, is everybody gets to go home alive and in one piece. I hate that too, but that's the nature of schooling now. I mean, why we have to do these assessment inventories every 2 weeks and check on our schools, make sure doors aren't propped open, and that if something's broke, we get it fixed. I've told you the story, Uvalde. It's hot in Texas. They propped the back door open. Shooter walked in and found a door that the handle was broke, went in and killed every kid in the room. I mean, that's But it's not just that. I mean, that's bad enough. That's beyond my comprehension. But what that does to schools, you know, I've got so many
Yep.
scars on me that it's immaterial, but I've got one under each eye. When they opened Butler High School in Matthews, and the resource officer panicked and pepper sprayed and put 29 kids in the hospital, we had riots for a solid month in the high schools. A solid month we had riots. That's how I got 2 of these scars. And so people don't understand what we go through, or what teachers and what administrators go through when stuff like this happens in society. I wish that's the part that they could understand, not the tragedy itself, but what it does to schooling. Let's talk about something more positive before I turn it over to Dr. Neal tonight. The stars of the week this week, Katie. I love what she said about the Finland phenomenon. Her takeaway is teachers are what make the difference in schools. Katie's right. Katie's absolutely right. Teachers make the difference in school. That's the difference in Finland. How they're treated, how they're compensated, how they're trained. I don't think it's necessarily how long or short or any of that stuff. I think that they just have better teachers, because teaching is like being a doctor in Finland. And so I think Katie's exactly right. I think the takeaway from that, there's a lot of things we could take away, and Beth had a lot of good takeaways in hers as well. But I think the overarching is all that other stuff is secondary. You know, you have good teachers, you can get the job done. I think that was a well pointed out, Katie. And again, Beth had some very thoughtful points in hers. And Marie's killing the assignments. She's just wearing us all out on assignments. Look at her go. She's already nearly to the end of the app sale. She's doing a great job on those, and I like her work too. She's a very good writer. So she's our assignment star of the week. And now our task stream stars are Anne Marie, Beth, Andrew, and Heather. They've already uploaded their evidences from CNI. So I appreciate that. So if you hadn't uploaded your 4 evidences from CNI, go to task stream. I've got all of you loaded, and make sure that you upload those so that you can add your other 2 and we'll be done. All right. That's all I know, and some things I didn't. Dr. Neal, I'll turn it over to you. I'll share my screen. You tell me where to go, and off we go.
We're gonna start with, let's start with, does group 2 want to go first this time? So we'll stop at the bottom and work our way up. Group 2 had, let's start with number 17. So you have to scroll way down, and then we'll be scrolling back up after we get done with their 3. 17.
I don't mind taking that one.
All right, Alicia, this is Mike is the best you have. Give us a little overview.
So he's a mathematics teacher, and he's highly supportive, and he's usually used for in-service training for the district. However, he's late every single morning because he doesn't have a first block, and he wants to use that time to do his raises, bushes, and because that's the perfect time to do his roses. And so teachers are complaining that this is favoritism and that everyone should get their first period off. So the biggest problem is that he's late, and it looks like you're showing favoritism. And so my possible solutions were meeting with him and having a conference to discuss his tardiness, and going over the handbook at your beginning meeting and opening meeting, and discussing your expectations and explaining that it's expectations for everyone. And if it continues, to do an official write-up with consequences.
Good job, Alicia. Thank you. Anybody else in the group have other solutions you might provide?
Well, I was wondering about, in my district, we have to clock in and clock out. I know not every district does that, but as far as like contractual time, if he's coming in late every day, is he meeting even the expectation with that? And then one of the solutions would be to just remove the first period planning that he has and switching it out in the future. So that was just a couple additional things to what Alicia said.
Good points, Heather. Thank you. Yes. Now that Many schools do have clock in and out. Some, it's still up to individual districts with whether or not they do that. I know a lot of districts teachers clock in but don't clock out. And it varies everywhere, but you definitely might be showing a little favoritism. And because he is a good teacher and because he does do things well in the classroom, performs well, you want to give him a little bit of leeway. But that is when it comes to time in the building and your own personal seat time, not just student seat time, you have to be careful and wary of that. Anybody else in that group have another solution? I don't know who else was in that group. So was it Natalie who's not here?
I'm in that group as well.
Oh, Andrew, did you have any other solutions?
Well, for me, the biggest thing was just handling personal business on the clock, right? So I mean,
Yes.
I feel like there's not really a gray area there. You don't do your personal things while you're supposed to be at work, and that's the same for every job, not just teaching, but especially when supervision is as important as it is in our field. So I don't know. I just
love
think,
that, Andrew, how important supervision is in our field.
yeah,
Absolutely. Dovetails right back into my first rant of the evening about
Yep.
safety and security. All right, let me do the legal right quick.
Okay.
Who makes the master schedule? Principal makes the master schedule, right? It's in your contract. It's in state law that you have to do that. Why does he have first period planning? Because you gave it to him. That's on you. And so legally, you're the one that assigns that. He can't assign his own first period planning. So that's the first problem. Second is, and this goes into a little bit deeper, this goes into flex time as well. The state does not allow you to pay people for work they have not done yet, or pay them when they didn't come to do the work. Now, I know people use comp time, and I know districts that run comp time, but comp time is not legal. Let me say that again. Comp time is not legal, where you would say to somebody like Mike, all right, you didn't come in first period this morning, Mike. You can do some time later. You're not allowed to do that. You can't work extra and then get time off during the regular instructional day. There is no comp time. Now, if your district does it and you say, well, Dale, I again, it's all fun and games till somebody gets their eye put out, till somebody finds out. Comp time is illegal. This is a form of comp time. We have him doing district PD after school to make up for basically him not working his contracted time. That is illegal. We cannot do that. A, you make the master schedule. You're legally responsible. He can't make his own. B, we don't do comp time. We don't trade time during the instructional day. The state pays for that. They pay his salary. They determine when he will come and not come. You cannot let him not come to work. That's the legal perspective.
It does say you are Mike's new principal. So let's say you come to a school, the master schedule's been set, everything is rolling, and you see this inequity that is occurring. Sometimes you're going to have to make adjustments, but it's best to do it on the front end than too far on the back end and let things continue.
If I changed schedules one time at new school vice principal, I changed them after 2 weeks. I changed the master schedule completely after 2 weeks. Now, was everybody mad? Yeah, they were madder than damn it. But I was young and strong then, and so they just had to be mad from a distance. They didn't get too close and talk too loud. But I had no choice. The previous administration, which was an interim administration, for some reason, had made a 9-period day in a junior high school. Well, that's all. That's okay for 7th and 8th grade. What kind of trouble does that get you in for 9th grade when you have 9 periods a day that are only 40 minutes long? You don't have
Not
enough
enough seat
seat
time.
time by the end of the year to get a Carnegie unit for high school graduation in any of the high school ninth grade courses. So you go to school for a whole year and not get any credit toward graduation if you only did 39, I think it was 39 minutes actually, because the class change time. They did 39-minute classes because the kids were rowdy and they said they couldn't stand them for more than that. Well, that's okay for 7th and 8th grade. It's really not okay if you can't make kids behave. But ninth grade, that's not an option in ninth grade to have a 39-minute high school class and expect
No.
that the kids get a unit at the end of the year, a Carnegie unit for graduation. So 2 weeks in, I had, took me 2 weeks, but we started a whole new schedule. You just have to bite the bullet. You can't fix that on the back end.
Yeah, and if you walk into a situation like this, you may not be able to change the schedule right off, especially if it's a high school schedule, because that would probably put your data manager in the grave. But you can set your expectations and understanding about what the work day looks like and catch it on the front end and address it. And you can address it. You don't have to be ugly about it. You don't have to be, I'm the boss and you're going to listen to me either, because that's not going to go over well. But you can talk about what the expectations are from all staff. And yes, you're new and I don't know what the old principal did, but this is how we're going to operate things at this point.
It's another one of those opportunities for a critical conversation.
Yeah.
And you don't need to send everybody an email about coming to work on time. You don't need to post something in put slips in the mailbox or post something in the lounge. You need to have a critical conversation with Mike Flynn.
Yep. That's another good point. We talked about that last week. You don't have to reprimand everybody.
Exactly.
For one person.
The rest of them even matter. Now, tangential to that, here's a situation that a friend of mine has, a high school principal in Charlotte. The baseball coach came to him and said, I'm going to quit if you don't give me last period of the day planning.
Yep, that happens all the time.
I want last period of the day planning.
Every coach does.
And the principal said to him, we can't start athletics until after the mandatory 15 minutes after the bell rings when we clear the buildings, in the mandatory 30 minutes of study hall. You can't start till 3 o'clock anyway. Why would you need last period planning? Because I want it and I'll leave if you don't give it to me. And he said, he gave him a hail and hearty handshake and slap on the back and wished him well. That's all you can do. That in some situations, that's all you could do. But in the bigger situation is think about this. You folks are curriculum people. You're really nice. My tribe is really pushy, egotistical, mean, nasty. If he demands this week, what will he want next week? And so, no, love you, mean it, wish you well, but you are in charge of the master schedule, and you are in charge with enforcing that master schedule. You have a school activity report that's pulled once a month. Students and teachers better be where you say they are, because somebody else is paying the freight on them. Remember, the state sends you money to pay the teachers and to educate those kids. They better be where you say they are.
Yeah. And teaching what you say they're teaching.
They're supposed to get.
Yep.
Pardon me, Dr. Neal.
No, you're fine. Exactly correct.
Remembering when we talk about funding, it goes with law, because there's expectations that come with money. You can't let people not work and get paid. You can't trade time during the instructional day. You can't not hold people accountable to meet the schedule that's been put in place that meets the state standards for seat time, instructional time, all those things. That's why you are responsible for that master schedule, because it says everything that happens or doesn't happen in your building. And if you're not the one making the master schedule, then you're not in charge in your own building. Whoever makes the master schedule is in charge. That's the way it works. It is sacrosanct in our business. You cannot delegate that to anybody else, because you will be held accountable for that. And there's a lot of money riding on it, a lot.
Oh, yeah. All right, 18. Now, this is a little relevant probably for today when we're in the height of election, but this is write your legislators. Who wants to summarize this one for us?
Well,
Okay, Andrew.
um, so this happened that a middle school principal is got phone calls from the superintendent, members of the school board, and a state legislator about a social studies assignment that one of their teachers did. Basically, the teacher had his students write letters expressing concern over proposed budget cuts. And the complaints were that it appeared that the students were coached on what to say by the teacher, and that there was very aggressive language, not necessarily foul or anything of that nature, but they could tell that it wasn't the thoughts of the students, and that the school board and the superintendent wanted the teacher fired for unprofessional conduct. And it was also noted that the local paper and news outlets had picked up the story as well. So it was creating a little bit of a PR nightmare. And what I got out of this is I felt like the core of the assignment itself could have been really cool, but the way it was implemented was not good at all. So I don't see anything inherently wrong with asking students to write letters to the legislature. Where they came in to issues was when they forced their own political or personal values on the students and was telling them what to write. As a social studies teacher, you're supposed to teach your civic duty and that sort of thing, but you're supposed to have a neutral perspective. Your students should not know your political affiliation. And so that the way that, and the fact that he didn't read them before he sent them was probably not the best idea either. I think firing him is a tad aggressive, but that definitely needs to have that's definitely a conversation that needs to be had, and maybe a formal write-up. But I feel like firing is a little aggressive, because it also mentioned that the state legislator, I'll get that word right eventually,
It's a mouthful.
said that he didn't really have an issue with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it was
That's-
more the superintendent and the school board who were just mad that it was
that
becoming
attention was
PR.
brought to it
Right.
and it was publicized.
Yeah.
Anybody else in the group have anything other twist to their solutions? Or maybe you think he should be fired? Alicia,
No,
you're good?
Yeah, I agreed with everything that Andrew said. The assignment itself, I think you probably could look in the standards and see if that was aligned to it, but it was the conflict of interest when you're asking students to write kind of on your own behalf that you're opposed to the budget cuts for teachers yeah. So I think, that's more of a have a conversation, do better in the future kind of thing. And kind of hold off, and the PR will eventually bad PR will eventually die down.
Yeah. When I was an elementary principal, there was a time when, all the teachers were wearing the red shirts They were going to Raleigh to march or whatever. They were threatening to, since you can't strike in North Carolina, but they were threatening to walk off. You know, it was pretty heated. And of course, parents were like, what can we do? And even some kids were like, well, what can we do? And I had to be very careful to communicate with the staff that we can't put our ideas and thoughts into the kids' heads about that they should be fighting for us. If the parents ask and just wonder what's going on, you can give them the facts, but you do have to be, I think, very careful in giving your opinions about things, and then certainly projecting those opinions on students. Dale, what you think?
Would this be different if it was a private school or a charter school?
Oh, I can tell you what some private schools are telling their kids right now.
So this is a public school problem.
Mhm.
Private schools are not bound by the same neutrality. So I always get that question. And so I just want to clear that up. So we're speaking for public schools now, is my point.
And that includes charter schools, because charter
Which
schools are
includes
public
charter
schools.
schools, which goes, they are public schools. And that's,
Yeah.
you know, people kind of lump charters and privates together. They are not. Charters
Nope.
have to be lumped with regular K-12 public schools because they are state funded public schools. All right. So now you just, you know, you can do something, again, a critical conversation, and remind the teacher that, you know, first thing you need is make sure you check your assignments and do those things. But from a legal perspective here, now the superintendent can recommend and the board can fire this teacher. Now, I'll just tell you, they'll lose in court. Even though North Carolina is a right to work state, proving unprofessional conduct, this does not fall, and if you look that up, this doesn't fall in any of those boundaries or any of those definitions of unprofessional conduct. Again, you know, boards and superintendents find out all the time. They can do whatever they want until it goes to court. And even in a right to work state, this one will not stand. There's been several cases like this. This one will not stand. This is not unprofessional behavior. That
may be unethical behavior.
Yes.
But not illegal behavior.
It's nothing. That's exactly right. It's nothing illegal. He's not drinking on the job. None of those kinds of things, or inappropriate relationships, or any of that kind of stuff that you could get somebody on unprofessional conduct. It does not fall within the boundaries of that at all. And I don't care how good you think your general counsel is in your district, they're going to get killed in court over one like this. You cannot fire him. Well, you can, but you're going to pay the price if you do.
Yeah.
There's going to be any number of organizations that will take this case pro bono and kill you in court, and would love to have it. Would love the Southern Poverty Center, Law Center. They'd love to have a case like this. They'd love to have a case like this. And, you know, the teacher will become a martyr. They'll get their job back. You'll have to pay them. There'll be a substantial fine. All those kinds of things will happen. And so the point of that is this. One of the things you have to learn in leadership right off the bat is just because you can doesn't mean you should. You have to learn how to temper the use of the end of your finger. It's, you know, you can make things happen. You know, you can point and make things happen. You have to, you know, fall out of love with that kind of thing. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yes, there's a number of things that you can do with this teacher, and you should, but firing is for unprofessional conduct is not one of them, not from a legal sense.
But I also think as a leader, when you know, especially right now in a highly charged political season, that you have to have conversations with your staff about keeping yourself in check, regardless. And kids, especially, you know, they will try to poke the bear and get teachers to say things or get them riled up. just if they have an idea of what their political stance is, just to ensue an argument. So I just think it's one of those things you need to be a little preemptive on when you know that the environment right now is a highly publicized political
Yes.
environment right now with a big election ahead. So
Yeah, and
but
all
it's
the
hard.
rhetoric. Yeah,
It's hard,
Yeah.
but it is important for teachers to try to be as neutral as possible.
yeah. You got to stay on the sidelines if you're in public school, and they don't, then you have to take steps to ameliorate that. But you know,
Mhm.
you can't go too far. As superintendent, you got to understand that this might be the time when you're just secretary to the board. You're not in charge of the board. You're secretary to them. But this is when you would bring in yourself and your general counsel and say, we don't really have the grounds to do this. I know you can, but it will not go well for us down the road.
Right.
If you do something like this. And so cooler heads have to prevail in cases like this. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. Great job. Thank you. And then 19, which is on there. Yep.
Okay.
scroll- And Heather, you're going to give us that summary?
I'll recap this one. The setting is an elementary school with 530 students. Basically, the principal was out of the building the previous afternoon for a district meeting. So the following day, they're checking all of their emails, notes, all the things, and they come across a note that had been left by a 5th grade teacher attached to an assignment. And basically, the teacher said, I thought you might want to see this. And the essay was about the students' favorite things, but it ends with some pretty concerning statements such as, but I'll never get to have these things. Sometimes I wish I was dead. Sometimes I want to kill myself. So there's several problems with this. For one thing, the communication between the teacher and the principal. I don't think leaving a note on desk that they may or may not see, that's not really, we need to talk about what's urgent and what that protocol would be. But also, just having the mental health crisis protocol. I know it, and I teach at an elementary school, and our counselors have to do the SLAP assessment, which is the suicide risk assessment, more than you would think in elementary school. So my big problems were that the mental health crisis protocol wasn't followed. I think North Carolina requires that. I know we all take the vector training. In fact, I just had to take it for this month, which was on mental health. And just kind of, yeah, I mean, so I think right from when you see the note, I think you have to do several things. You have to fix it so if in the future this isn't an issue, but you also have to deal and help that student that wrote the note and follow whatever your specific protocol is. So, and then of course I would do more staff professional development on mental health awareness too.
And the protocol.
Yeah.
All right. The problem here, and I'll go the legal, I'm gonna let y'all discuss it, is 2 words were reversed in the federal law. Just 2 words were reversed. They weren't changed. 2 words were reversed. It used to be persons responsible. Now it's responsible person, and it changed everything. On reporting for any of these kind of mental health, sexual or anything, it used to be persons responsible. That meant there was only certain people in your building designated, like the principal, assistant principal, counselor, to call in these kinds of things. The law changed in 2021, and so everybody that gets a check at your building is now known as a responsible person. It's everybody's responsibility now to call the law or enact the mental health protocol. That changed 3 years ago. So everybody that gets a check at your building is now a responsible person. You can't just write a note and leave it on somebody's desk. It's your responsibility to enact the protocol, whether it's calling your SRO 911 or mental health. You have to enact the protocol. Everybody in your building at that first required faculty meeting, you have to remind them, everybody in this building that gets a check is a responsible person. That's federal language and federal law. And it says that you must enact whatever protocol that this situation calls for.
Thank you, Heather. Anybody else in that group have any other thing they'd like to add to it? Heather, I think you're good in identifying, yes, some retraining probably needs to occur. When these cases were written, I don't think we were definitely at the mental health crisis that we are at now. I think schools are much more aware. They're on top of it. Staff are trained. You have to go through risk assessments, like you said, whenever something like this comes up. You can't say, oh, I think he was just joking. You have to take every threat like this serious. Even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes before the bell rings. I've had more than one afternoon where something has been discovered as kids are walking to the bus. We've had to stop everything and get that kid in, get the parents in, and take hours evaluating the situation. So, but you can't take that risk. Like Dale said, everybody's responsible.
Everybody that gets a check at your building. So, and I say it that way because sometimes there's a debate as to whether classified people have to do this, like the custodian, the lunchroom lady, teachers. Everybody that gets a check, everybody that's a paid employee is now a responsible person. And everybody has to understand that.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Heather. Anybody else want to comment on this before we move on to group 1? No?
I was going to say that we took a suicide prevention training. We had a suicide of a freshman last year that really rocked the school, and we had to do a training this year, and they were telling us that if you can change the situation in 1 hour, most like 86% or something of suicides happen within 1 hour after they decide to. So if you see a note like that in school, you catching them before they go home could be the difference in saving their life or not. So I think that was a really good point to make, that, even if it's 5 minutes before the bell, they're going home after that, and there's no telling who's going to stop the situation there. So it's really important.
Exactly. That's a good point, Mindy. And, you don't let that kid ride the bus home. Or if that kid is on the bus and, I have driven to the bus stop and waited for that kid to get off and waited for the parent. Because I'm not about to take that risk of what could possibly happen. And yes, are the kids sometimes writing things just out of frustration? Of course, but you can't wait and wonder if this is going to be the one kid. So you have to take them all seriously. And if it's after school, you just better mark off your afternoon, because you're going to have to deal with it. Or I have had a little girl who wrote something. We found it after she had gotten home, and I kept calling the house and nobody would pick up the phone. So I drove to the house. And, the mom freaked out a little bit when she saw me standing at the door. But, she was also very grateful after we talked through things and kind of dealt with the situation, that it was brought to her attention. And that was even before we had these long protocols that you have to follow now. But I had to make sure she was safe before I could leave her and before I could go home at night. All right. Group 1 ready? Yay. All right, Dale, you're going to scroll back up to number 9. The new photocopier. Oh my gosh, this can be so relevant. All right, who wants to evaluate or give us a little summary?
I can do 9. Um,
Okay,
so I felt like this one was kind of dated, but then
it is a
Uh,
little dated, but it can still be a
but
little
there's still
relevant too.
such copier issues.
Yes.
So the principal is trying to determine a way to save money due to low enrollment and budget cuts. And he is investigating whether a less expensive copy machine will suffice for the school's needs and also save money. Of course, faculty and staff are opposed to this idea because the less expensive machine would not meet all of the needs or possibly just slow down process a little bit, take longer to do the same job. And then it did mention that some tasks with the less expensive copy machine would require traveling to the district office for copies. So I thought, I mean, the key problem is, saving money on the copy machine comes at the expense of time for your teachers and your office staff. So possible solutions, just keeping the current copy machine and finding other ways to fundraise. We talked about a lot of those last week with, different fundraisers and mini grants and photo sales and all of those things. Looking for other ways to cut costs. Or, I mean, a possible solution could be switching to the less expensive copier for a trial period. But in my opinion, the best would be looking for other ways to fundraise and cut cost.
Instead of trading out the copier.
Yeah, I mean, I think you
Yep.
run into a lot of problems with people having to travel to do some jobs
Yeah.
on a copier. I mean, teachers have very little time and for planning and as it is.
Yeah, if you factor that piece in.
Yeah.
And one critical component of this is who should you probably even bring this problem to discuss?
To your faculty.
Yeah, your school improvement team.
Yeah.
Who should be who should have input on the budget so that it is
Mhm.
not your decision, that it does come collectively from the staff representatives. Now, can you have all the staff give their input on this? Probably not. If it's a big staff, is going to just weigh out 50-50, but you do have your team that should be giving input. And if you give them all of the facts, you give them the information, you ask for their input in helping to solve the problem, then they're either going to say, let's do the copier, or they're going to be the ones to help give some ideas of other things that they can do to, I guess, fundraise or impact the budget in a positive way to make up for that difference. Now it's going to be your job to know what the numbers are. And you have to, I remember a huge copier fight, paper fights. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I think now with technology, we don't rely on it quite as heavily as we used to, but copies were a make or break thing, especially in elementary school. But if you have real numbers about how much each copy costs, what the lease agreement is, what the difference is going to be, and give them those numbers and let them help you problem solve, I think you're going to be viewed in a little more favorable light than if it just comes as your idea.
I had a question about that because copies are an issue at my school. We actually have all been given limits because one teacher, can't control her copies, so all of us now have limits. And I was talking actually with my principal about this case study, and he said that my district does it all with leases, as you mentioned, and like he can't get out of the lease. So like what their copier is what they have. And he
Right.
can't swap to a smaller, cheaper machine because of that. So how would that potentially play with this
Well,
case
and see,
study.
that's how every district is different. I've worked in school districts where we managed our own copier budget. We were given a number, we were given the amount of paper, and that was it. I've worked in districts where it was a district-wide lease. I've worked in a district when they moved from it being a school lease to a district lease, which really changed things up and actually lowered the costs when you did a district-wide lease rather than the individual school leases. So, you know, I don't know in the last 5 years how much that has changed, but in the districts I worked in, more and more went to that district lease policy because it is cheaper. And then you're right, you don't have a lot of leeway. But then they're probably going to give you, this is your budget, these are the number of copies it's going to make, and then you're going to have to figure out how to divvy that up.
Yeah, he said that if you go over it, you get a bill at the very end of the year where I think it was last year, my school had to pay 3,000, but another school and district had to pay 10,000 for their over copy limits that they were given by the DO. So,
and when we first took on the district lease, my bookkeeper kept saying, what does our number look like? And nobody could tell us. Like, you were supposed to know quarterly, like, okay, you've spent this much over. Well, they couldn't get the numbers right until the summer came and they were like, oh, you owe us $2,500. And had no idea that was coming. So that's another giant headache that can occur. Dale, you probably were back when they still did the purple copies.
I've got 17 stories to tell on copy machines. I'll start with the most relevant.
Give us two.
I'll start with the most relevant. I moved to case 20. This is in support of what Dr. Neal said. Budget decisions should be with your school improvement team. Just like this one, you know, this one is same thing. How do we divide the money up? What do we spend the money on? Again, you as principal should not be making that decision solely. The law says that you are to have a school improvement team that is to develop a school improvement plan, and your master schedule and your budget must support that school improvement plan. So any monies that you're spending, local monies, should go through that school improvement team for a group decision. You can't bring everybody in, but you have teachers on that committee. So make sure you understand any budget item should run through your school improvement team. That's state law. Now, copier stories.
Purple master.
I had the purples. I used to bootleg them in the science building for people when they'd run out of copies. I could tell thousands. But here's what I really want to say about this.
Number 9. Yeah, there it is.
I'll get back to this one. Now, if y'all repeat that I was deep and philosophical, I'll deny it, and I'll burn this recording. In cases like this, and I worried about this 40 years ago when I was an assistant principal and we had risographs, which were the blue machines, but on steroids. They could make thousands and thousands of copies really cheaply. And we thought we would save money as a district. Our paper supply at the middle school where I was AP that was supposed to last all year ran out at the end of the first month. The more copies you make, the more, and the easier and cheaper, the more they make. But my point is, we don't have, maybe we don't, but I think we still do have this problem. I think copying is the antithesis of good instruction. I don't want to get, again, I'm not really equipped to get deep and philosophical. You know, I'm a one-legged man in the behind kicking in that case, but I think copies really hurt your instructional program if they're overused, especially worksheets, those kinds of things. What I would be most concerned about as an instructional leader in that building is why are we making all these copies? What are we doing? Are we using this? Are we using this in place of guided instruction? Are we using this to send worksheets for homework that we don't? Homework's a bad thing to start with. And are we just sending worksheets home? I mean, why are we having this many copies?
Are we making word finds for kids to sit and do? because that one really got under my skin.
I mean, why is it we need this many copies, especially in modern times with technology? But I thought about this 40 years ago. I'm not sure this is a good thing for instruction, that we're just running the wheels off the copy machine every day.
Yeah.
And so are we giving that many tests? And if we're giving that many tests, we say, well, I'm not giving out worksheets there. I'm just copy and test. Now, you know the way to fatten up a hog, don't you? You feed him, you don't weigh. You can't test kids all the time. You got to teach them sometime. And I had a teacher to tell me that one time. Oh, I'm doing assessments. Let me know, because I want to come watch when all the teaching is happening. All I ever see them is doing worksheets.
Yeah. Now, there was a time when we stopped adopting textbooks and teachers had to make a lot of copies of all their materials.
Yeah.
And that became a huge issue because we didn't have any, we had to copy everything.
Yeah.
That's a big fight. There have been many, many fights about copies.
Yeah.
Many.
So the overarching is, look at the legal part. Who has the lease? Can you break it? Should you break it? Citing the money should go through your school improvement team, and you need to be looking what impact those copies are having on your instructional program. Those are the three takeaways that you need to take from that case.
Yeah. All right, 15. Scroll down.
I can do that one.
All right, Mindy, thank you.
So 15 is about a new principal who takes over elementary school grades 1 through 5. Her predecessor was there for 30 years at the district and everything. And when this principal comes in, I think she's on day 3 is what I believe. And she comes across a letter from the president of the PTO. And she is saying that she's not happy with her daughter's class assignment. She's been placed with a level 1 teacher. Although the teacher is lovely, young, and pleasant, her daughter requires special help, and that can be seen in her records. And she believes that the novice teacher is unprepared to deal with it, and she knows that there are plenty of level 2 and level 3 teachers at the school. And she's disappointed because she feels that her daughter should be in a level 3 teacher's class, a specific teacher, and that the predecessor assured her that that would happen. And so what I wrote was you needed to review any district, state, or federal policies regarding students in need. Check and see if that student has an IEP or a 504 of any sort. And then you need to be clear on the Americans with Disabilities Act. Make sure that if that student has their needs, they are being met. For that matter, any needs that the student might has, needs to be met. Review her records and determine what her needs are. Respond to the PTO president in a respectful manner. And then ultimately make a decision based on Janie's needs. And if it's to stay in that classroom, explain why and how you can help meet her needs. But it's possible that it would be to move her. And it's all going to come down to basically you assessing Janie's needs and seeing if she's an IEP and 504 and kind of following those laws.
I like that, Mindy. I love this one because this is exactly what happened to me when I went to be a principal in an elementary school of about 700 kids. And I started like in August, maybe end of July. So a lot of things had been put in place, but the classes had not been divided yet. I had literally a stack this high of about 80 parent requests for teachers. And this had been the practice of the previous principal for 10 years, as she let them all have their way. And I did not take any teacher requests except for staff members, because I did feel like you didn't give many perks as a teacher. I'll let you have a perk of where you think you would like for your kid to have, but it caused a lot of tears and a lot of rumbles. But once I laid out that that was not the practice that we were going to follow, and this was going to be how I ran things, there were a lot of mad people, but they got used to it and the letters stopped coming. Now, if somebody needed, I would allow them to request a teacher with certain characteristics if they felt like would match their kids, like some were more structured or a less structured teacher and so forth. And I would try to make the matches there. And I certainly did not give PTO parents, because mine was very, very powerful. I did not give them a leg up just because they were on the PTO, just because they thought they would get special privileges. So I love this one. I love it.
Dr. Neal, I have a question.
Yes.
How do you, and this is something that with all these cases I've thought of, like, how do you know when to like lay down your expectations and what you're going to do as a new principal versus when to kind of give in to the community or the parents? Like, how do you make those calls, especially in your first few years as principal? Do you just trust your gut, kind of, or I mean, how do
Trust
you
your
do
gut,
that?
and I tell you, it's experience, because early on, it's a young principal, I may not have done that. And I still have very good friends who allow this and do it, and it works for them. And I'm not saying that it's not a practice, it doesn't work. It just did not work for me because I didn't think it was fair. And I think it led to very imbalanced classes.
Right.
There we go.
But
You hit the nail on the head.
yep, imbalanced classes, and all the good kids with all the involved parents get the
There you
same
go.
and the higher test scores.
There you go. You just hit the nail on the head. I was waiting on you. I held my tongue. We finally got there. Heather, what did Snoop Dogg say? If you don't know, you better ask somebody.
Yeah.
Young administrators need to have a mentor that they trust, that they can
Yes.
run these things by. I got a call. Why in the world she called me? Boy, she needs help bad. One of my doctoral students that finished in December, she called me on the way home today. She got a new job last week. She's the new director of exceptional children in her district. And so she called me on the way home today. I got one from Jessica that was in this group. Jessica that was in this group last fall, I believe, from where is she, in Robinson County? She's got promoted to principal. She's got a new principalship. She's only been on the job for what, 2 weeks? She sent me an email this first thing this morning about how to deal with the difference between PTA and PTO this morning. Very first thing, I've already got one this morning. I mean, you're hunting help if you emailing or calling me, but you better ask somebody. That's when you're new.
Yes.
Both of them in the first 2 weeks of their job, they've reached out already over legal questions. You need to find a mentor, somebody that you can talk to. Sometimes it's good, but finally we got around. Dr. Neal finally, she buried the lead there for a little while, but she finally told you the answer. The answer with letting teachers and kids pick classes is we go back to the old system of bluebirds, robins, and buzzards, high, medium, and low classes. That's why you don't let them pick. So I'm probably the only person still alive, I guess, who was principal before accountability, then after.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, before they just put them, where the parents wanted them. And I was charged with, in my second year when we went to accountability as principal, we had to stop that. We had to do heterogeneous grouping. That was the first thing. That was the district mandate. We had to do that. I can't tell you the number of calls and people. I had one mother that called me up. Why'd you put my kid in the dumb class? I said, I didn't put your kid in the dumb class. They're mixed. Well, Jimmy's in there and everybody knows he's dumb. That's exactly what, the mother said to me. I mean, you had kids, if your kid was in the room with them, you knew you were with the slow bunch. But the reason why you can't let them pick is they will resegregate into high, middle, and low. That's the answer. That's why you can't do that.
It does. It makes very imbalanced classes. But I will tell you, because the school where this occurred was a lot of high need parents and very involved parents. So I let the superintendent know and talk to her before I did this, because I knew she was going to get some calls.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of district it was. You didn't just call, the elementary coordinator or somebody. everybody went straight to the superintendent,
Right.
and she took every call. And so I knew that ahead of time. And I was like, I just want you to know that this is how I would prefer to run things. And and she was very supportive. So,
Yeah.
you know, you do need to know that if you're going to go changing and flipping the switch in a school, that you do have some backing somewhere, because somebody's going to call.
Yeah. That crowd from over at Wayno's Little Vegas might come by and shoot up the school in Lincoln County. Last time I drove by there, I heard gunfire.
You never know.
You never know at Wayno's. That's exactly right. So yes, but you know, the beauty of the deal with the heterogeneous grouping when I was in Burke is it was a district mandate. Now, some principals ignored it because they'd been there forever and we had a new superintendent.
Yep.
They had one and they ignored it. But you know, now don't call me about complaints. You're the one that said you wanted heterogeneous grouping. Well, this is the outcome on that. It's exactly right. This is the outcome. You asked me to do this. You wanted all the classes mixed, you know, equal ability. Well, this is what happens. But I think the original point in this one is check for the IEP when they say that the kids got special needs. Check for the IEP, the 504. Check those things and make sure that the kid is placed according to where they're supposed to be. You know, one of the case studies that we'll have in the second half is they put because for whatever reason, they put every EC kid in that grade level in the same room. You can't let stuff like that happen. Could you imagine every EC kid in that grade level was in one teacher's room and all the gifted kids? All she had was the gifted and the EC in the same room. And of course, her plan was she just had the AG kids teach the EC kids every day. How many laws does that violate? That violates so many laws. They probably take your driver's license and your fishing license. You couldn't be licensed to do anything if you did something that dumb, much less your principal's license. But yes, that's what we're talking about. If you let parents, that's the kind of stuff you end up with. That might violate federal or state law or local board policy, but it's definitely not going to be smart for the running of your school. They're only interested in their kid.
And you need to get all of the facts before you jump and make a decision too, especially if you're new. You need to ask the secretary, what's this parent like? You need to ask the teachers, what's this kid like? You know, because you might have to switch them, but you want to make it for the right reasons, not just pressure from a parent.
Yeah.
Or they will get the idea that they are in charge.
Yeah. And they'll retrack your building. We used to call it tracking. They'll retrack your building if you let them.
Oh, yeah.
Into high, medium, and low.
Yep.
And
they'll tell you when you can make copies and when you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that happened with our PTO as well. They were doing all the copies and they were deciding what teachers got copies and which ones didn't.
Yep.
So that's why we had to bring the hammer down on lots of things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, last one, 16. Who's going to fight over that one?
I'm non-confrontational. I'll happily share.
Wait a minute.
Maria, haven't heard from you at
You
all.
now,
I've been quietly sitting.
we don't have a lot of confidence in you if you're going to start out with a whopper to start with. You're shy and retiring and quiet. Wait a minute now.
I like listening. I like listening and hearing everything. And then with my microphone off, I can say all kinds of dirty words and nobody hears me and everything's fine. Yeah. Anyway, so we object. We got angry parents on this one.
That's
so it's a high
nice.
school 9 through 12. We have parents who are requesting that their daughter not have to take her health class because they disagree with what's being taught. They object and say that what's being taught is contradicting the values and beliefs in the home. They've had conversations with previous school representatives. They dropped some names. I don't know who these people are. I'm presuming that they're teachers or administrators. I don't know. They're just names. The class covers sex ed and alcohol use, and the parents think that It's a contradiction that the school is even teaching these things in health class. And so it's gorgeous, this bit here. So there's a conflict between what the parents find to be valuable and what the school is actually teaching. They want an exemption, I think. And so you've got possibly a misalignment between what the parents are expecting versus what they're actually getting. But here's the thing. The health and PE curriculum is determined by the state. They're writing the curriculum and dictating what we're teaching. That credits is a requirement for graduation. In North Carolina, waivers do not exist. In South Carolina, you can get an exemption if you're doing something like ROTC or marching band, or if you have a health or well-being risk that prevents you from doing PE, or if you have a religious reason. None of the issues cited in the letter suggest that that's the case. And at the same time, schools have the right to determine curriculum content, but parents also have the rights regarding their children's education. However, I don't know how I know these little things, but there was a Supreme Court case with a similar topic with this one, that schools are not violating parents and families' First Amendment rights by teaching them this kind of curriculum with ideas that differ from what their beliefs are at home, because the school is not requiring that students believe the ideas they're being taught. They're just requiring that students hear about them. So in a way, part of it, we got to balance our responsibility to provide the health education the state requires us to provide, while also kind of respecting what these families want. And I think one of the big points here is to help our parents understand that, yes, we probably need to show them what the standards are asking, what it is that is being taught. And that it's not that we're telling children to have sex all willy-nilly or drink all the things, but rather we are saying it is in your best interest not to do these things, but if you do it safely. And that way we're covering all aspects in this case. So for me, looking at it, it's no, we can't exempt your child for this reason, but here's the value in what we are teaching and why we need to teach it. I don't know, throw some more things out here, people.
That's pretty good, Anne Marie. Anybody else want to add to?
I was
And
just
I'm
going to say,
impressed you know what South Carolina did too. Go ahead, Mindy.
sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No,
I was
no.
just going to say that, like she said, I also wrote down to review the state's course of study and curriculum for health class with the parents, because that is given to us by the state. And I also wrote that you can review your district policies on parental rights and possibly an opt-out policy if you have a school that has those. I put that you could even observe the class, so you have something to go to the parent with when you speak to the parent. Like I observed it, the teacher was meeting objectives and teaching the curriculum for the state. And then I just respond to the parents in a way that shows respect and document all communication with the parent about the issue.
That is very important, Mindy. Yes, document exactly what you have their letter, but you also document your responses. And a parent or parents like this, I've not had this exact situation, but some things they just didn't agree with, and they just ended up taking their kid out and homeschooling them.
Ding, 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 ding.
What, Dale? If we can hear you.
Ding, 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 ding. That's the answer.
Yep. Yep.
Because as Anne Marie said, we can't change state curriculum. And it's not a violation of their First or 14th Amendment to do this. That's the secondary on that one. You were right on first. Don't forget 14th, equal protection under the law. It doesn't violate either one of those. That's what that ruling was, First or 14th. And so we can't change. And the answer is homeschool, or if you can drive by all the local charter schools. If you see a lot of kids wearing tinfoil hats, that'd be the one for you. That's where you need to be, either that or homeschool. I mean, I'm
no,
old,
but yes, they will, because you can't change what the curriculum says.
That's exactly right.
I do like what Mindy said. I would also make sure that the teacher is teaching what is outlined in the curriculum, that they are very careful not to veer from it too
Exactly.
much or at
One
all.
way or the other. I mean, that circles back
Exactly.
to our first case of the evening here is, you know, we have content and we need to know what teachers are teaching. We need to be in the rooms, know what they're teaching, and they need to follow the standard course of study or Common Core, whatever it is that your district has adopted. That's what we need to be teaching, and that and nothing else. We got to stick to that. We can't add and we can't subtract. And it's not a violation of their First or 14th Amendment rights if we do that. And so they need one of them, you know, if somebody in the house has got a high school diploma, they can stay at home and homeschool. Or they can, there's plenty of fundamental charter schools out there associated with churches. That generally is that's their clientele.
You can help them apply for a voucher in North Carolina so they
Yep.
can go to the private school they want to.
Yeah, there's opportunity scholarships, what we call vouchers. That when they were, you know, the legislature's getting ready to approve on a whole bunch more of those, what they call opportunity scholarships, which just vouchers
Yep.
for kids to go to private school.
With public money.
You know, exactly. And so I was trying to sit here and think, I think I finally remembered. I relate a lot of things to music, so you know, but one of the lines from an old Molly Hatchet tune is, "It's not for everybody. Public school is not for everybody. We can't be all things to everybody." That's why we have. That's what people say. I like charter schools and private schools. That mean there needs to be different alternatives. What I have a problem with is how we fund them. I don't have a problem with them being. I've told you I work with Lincoln Charter School a lot. Langtree. I've trained all the administrators that want. I mean, I've got there's 4 or 5 that I work with on a daily or weekly basis that I think are great. My issue is we shouldn't be taking from traditional K-12 to fund them. But some of them are really good, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate some really good private schools that I've worked with. The folks from them. It's a funding issue, but we can't change what we do in public education. And so, you know, if these folks are good people and they're really sincere in this, then their option is to go is not us. That doesn't hurt my feelings. The option is not us. We can't provide you with what you want. There are other alternatives out there. You need to explore those. But we definitely can't excuse people from classes in school. Again, school activity report, kids got to be where they're supposed to be. There's got to be getting the credits and the instruction that the state is paying for. We can't let them go sit in the cafeteria for 3 lunch shifts or put them in the counselor's office or the gym, you know, fill in the blank, all the dumb stuff that I've done over the years. You can't do that stuff.
No.
Bell ring, go to class. Bell ring, go to next class.
Well, that's all of them. Y'all did a good job tonight.
They did. They did.
They are
And I'm enjoying reading their work too. I told you I love this group because their writing is so good and very thoughtful.
Yes.
Very thoughtful. And I like
Very
that.
well written.
You need to be thoughtful people in this business. Again, everybody can't be a North Star. Just, you know, you need some of us so that we can get something done, but you need to be thoughtful first and reflective. I do like reflection. That's how we improve our practice. And I'm noticing that y'all are really good at reflecting. I like that. And that's always the case with the C&I folks, is they're more reflective. And that's a good thing. You need to reflect on practice. That's the only way you can improve it. So some takeaways from tonight. If you don't know, ask somebody. When all of you are going to be new at some point. It's going to be your first job. You need to be able to have some people that you can ask some things if you don't know. You need to be reflective. You need to be thoughtful. You need to think of the outcomes. It's not just I'm making this parent happy by moving some kids. If you got 80, as Dr. Neal said, if you got 80, a stack of 80, what's going to happen? They're going to resegregate your school, and you're going to get killed at report card time when that happens. and you're gonna alienate a lot of teachers. And again, you're gonna get killed at report card time. So be thoughtful. Make sure you know the law. As Heather said, I mean, yeah, and make sure that you are present. I guess this is kind of a stretch here, but make sure you're present. You're paying attention. You're not always distracted. Yeah, go ahead and do that, or yeah, that's okay, or you need to be in the moment all the time, and that's the hardest thing for a school administrator, is to be in them. There's so many things going on at one time. You're so distracted that you just say, yeah, and you need to be in the moment. When you make a decision, when you're asked a question, carry a pad, write it down. I'll get back to you. You need to be in the moment, though. You can't be distracted. You must always be in the moment. You need to be present. You need to be paying attention. That's the hardest thing. The
And hit
hardest
all of
thing.
your facts.
Yep. All righty.
Just a reminder, don't forget about the APSL for those of who haven't turned anything in yet. Don't get too far behind.
Don't get too far behind. And so looking at my calendar here,
Oof.
we'll be on again next week.
Yes.
On
And
the,
I'll put more cases in the shell that I'll assign to you.
yep. On the 17th, we'll be back. And then our next time getting together after that will be October 1st. And then after that, we'll be in Charlotte on the 12th. So we're doing Jason's Deli for lunch on Saturday. Anybody want biscuits that morning, or just bring like before, and then we'll just do lunch at Jason's Deli? I'll get us I'll send out a survey to figure out what you want from Jason's Deli, and we'll have it brought in for lunch that day. And then, of course, we get out at 1 on Sunday. All right. Is there anything else on the housekeeping? Stars of the week. I appreciate what you're doing. Everybody's a star in this group. I saw somebody was turning in some stuff a while ago on, make sure you get your previous evidences into the task stream shell. I think that's it for me.
Everybody else good? Any questions before we sign off?
All right.
All right. Well, have a good night. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
I'll see you
Love
on
you, Nina.
campus tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
All righty. I'll be there.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.